I want to call to the stage our CHRO panel, which is going to be led by Jen Mann, EVP and CHRO of SAS. Jen was our 2015 winner for Sustainable Workforce CHRO of the Year Award, and she's joined on stage by every one of these folks is a winner or a finalist in the HRO Today CHRO of the Year Awards from companies such as Fairmont Hotels, Aflac, Caterpillar, and LinkedIn. So please help me welcome Jen Mann and the crew to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. So I have the honor of moderating today's panel, and I got to know a little bit about these guys over the last few weeks because I got to see their nominations. And I was humbled, inspired by the great work that they have been doing for their organizations. And a couple of them were winners last night. Congratulations to both of you, Kimberly and Pat, for your awards, and the rest of getting nominated was pretty incredible. So what I did was I took some pieces out of the nominations from their organizations that were highlighting some of the incredible work that they are doing, and I'm going to ask questions around those initiatives with a hyper focus around how technology played in either identifying the issue that resulted in the need for that initiative or has helped kind of solve that issue that they were trying to address. And in the interest of time, I want to save a little bit of room at the end to ask very specific technology questions if we have time to do that. So I'm going to jump right in and start with Kimberly. Kimberly was recognized last night, and I certainly understand why. I mentioned this to you last night, but I want to tell the group as well. Her efforts in volunteering and community outreach as an individual and also leading the way for her organization is really off the chart. So I want to thank you for being a model for those of us who seem to think we don't have time but need to make time to do that. But there were two areas in your nomination that I thought would be of interest to the group. The first one was around an initiative around diversity and inclusion. It was the Chairman's Award for Diversity Inclusion, and then also a Women in Leadership initiative. When you think about Caterpillar, and I could be wrong because I don't know the demographics, maybe you could share it with the group, but typically think about maybe a male-dominated industry. And so can you tell us a little bit about the demographic and these initiatives that you led?
Sure, thanks. So Caterpillar across the board is primarily 80% male, 20% female. Huge opportunity for us globally to do better and tap into talent that maybe otherwise wouldn't see Caterpillar as the right place to go. I think you can sort of get a stigma of an old manufacturing, dirty environment, and it's far from that in reality, and the technology that we have in place and the skilled engineers and digital folks that our business is changing dramatically. So how we tell that story is very important. I guess specific to the Chairman's Award, so we've had, whenever you do a diversity initiative, I don't think it can be a standalone initiative and just something nice to do. You need to embed progress into the business. We've had Chairman's Awards for years at Caterpillar that typically highlight our best products, innovation on our excavator or the best machine. And we have an annual event where the chairman hands out awards of all the great work going on in that space. So we actually recently implemented a Chairman's Award for Diversity and Inclusion, and it was fascinating, the submissions from we have over 100,000 employees globally. But much like the submissions for this event, the stories that were happening and the lessons learned across the globe were really telling and fascinating, and it was a great opportunity for our chairman to stand up and focus on the people side of the business and honor a business unit that was making progress. Specific to women in leadership, I think the gender issue is one that translates globally, whereas you get into other areas of diversity and it's not as easily understood. So rather than boil the ocean and focus on everything at once, we made a strategic focus on women in leadership. We have kind of 3 pillars that we're focusing on, sponsorship being one, the culture being the second, and finally pipeline and metrics. And I guess to your data question, really understanding our demographics, understanding the market and talent that's available in each area, and how we focus on pipeline and numbers and goals and results is something that we've made a lot of progress on. But you have to understand the market and understand what's available before you can really start to set realistic goals and make progress, which I'm thrilled to say we are making progress.
Okay, great. And there was some recognition of a talent management platform that you've implemented. I want to get to that a little bit later, but don't let me forget.
Okay.
All right, and Matthew, so congratulations on all your company recognition. So at Aflac, you have been on the Great Place to Work list since its inception. We share that at SAS as well, so I know that that's not an easy thing to do. One of the most admired companies, and then also this past year got recognized as a Great Place to Work for Millennials, which was a new award.
Right.
So in looking at the nomination, there was, and it was referenced last night as well, there was a focus on a career success center. And I want to talk a little bit about what problem that was solving for your organization, what that was all about.
Sure. The problem that we were trying to solve was really trying to engage people in talent development, talent management that are typically left out of the process. We have a very structured leadership development program that certainly gets the high potentials and the executive levels, but leaves out a big portion of the population. And we noticed a trend in all of our engagement surveys, we'll talk a little bit about technology and data later, that people were having a harder and harder time navigating all of our open positions and understanding how you can get promoted and how to manage their careers. So we went back to specific engagement survey data, actually the verbatims. We went deeper into the information and started to see this pattern, which started to, of course, emerge about when we started growing in the US and expanding our platform, where a lot of the employees that were joining were just kind of lost in the organization. We came up with this idea that maybe what we need to do to reach out to this population was to create an environment that did not replace good, solid managerial conversations, but gave people an outlet to talk about their career goals, talk about how to prepare for interviews, how to write resumes. We have a very experienced workforce at Aflac. The average person's been at Aflac 18 years. So a lot of these folks have just not interviewed. So when they post for jobs, they're posting against jobs that a lot of people are posting from the outside too, that have had skill sets and experiences in interviewing, resume writing, all those things. Seems very, very simple, but it was one of these things that we thought we could give back to the employees in a very easy way and really try and help people achieve their career goals. Now, we have expanded the platform dramatically. It's got a lot of interesting demographic information that we can share a little bit later. But the problem that we were trying to solve is literally how do we get the best people in the best jobs and how do we develop people long-term for the company's success. And we thought the best way to do that was almost in a career counseling, almost like a college would have, here's the kind of jobs that you should be looking for based on your background. We do that every day now at the Career Success Center, and we've seen good results so far.
That was an area that was of particular interest to me because our feedback from our employees, either through the Great Place to Work Trust Index or our employer engagement survey, said that was an area that we were struggling, and we did something similar this year, and we're kind of monitoring to see. Leveraging data to look at what positions people in certain areas typically go into, and then kind of coaching people in that. And also finding ways to career mentor when a manager is not doing that.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes you need to find other resources to help with that.
Right.
So there was another highlight last night was Real Talk. Can you just briefly tell us what that was about?
Sure. The company has always had a skip level environment where it's easy to get access to leadership on a broad level. The Real Talk sessions are a little bit more formalized where we have specific corporate initiatives that we're working on or talking about more broadly across the globe. And then we have critical leaders that come in and spend an hour, hour and a half, whatever it takes to allow people to ask questions, talk about how they are connected to the goals and achievements of the corporation. The Real Talk session is one of those things that is extraordinarily popular. We try and make them limited in scope, but we get hundreds and hundreds of people wanting to sign up for it because we think the intimate reactions and interactions are the best. But it's just one small little area that we have seen great returns on, and it takes very little to do that. It's just about making the time, making the schedules, and getting people engaged at the high levels of the corporation to connect people to not only just information, but also perspectives that may not be easy to obtain from their jobs.
Sometimes it's just the simple things.
Right.
So Pat, with over 70% of job seekers between the ages of 18 and 34 finding their jobs through social networking and resources like LinkedIn. We were curious to know how someone in the industry does it. And I know that talent acquisition was really a focus for your organization. It was referenced in your nomination as well. Tell us a little bit about the journey, how you've been kind of revamping real HR in general, but talent acquisition for your organization.
So we actually attempted a couple of things. One is that we did focus on our talent brand, making sure that it resonated, the language was resonating. We looked at a purpose-driven organization, so we aligned that purpose-driven professionals actually perform better, have higher engagement, stay longer. And so we actually recruited to make sure that their purpose, the millennials' purpose, was aligned with LinkedIn's purpose and how we support not only the company, the world, but the community in which they work. So we're really consciously trying to make that align. The other thing that we did, because we're in hand-to-hand combat for talent all the time, especially with the engineers, we looked at recruiting like a sales organization in terms of what is your pipeline, what's your total available market, how do you attract, what's the baseline of the quality of the candidates. We got really, really crisp on the qualitative aspect of the job to make sure that from a hiring committee we knew what we're looking for. And for those hard-to-fill roles, what we did is use the LinkedIn database actually and said how many people fill that role and how close are they associated, what's their affinity level within LinkedIn. Meaning, are they following my company page? Are they connected to my employees? Are they engaged with my employee group, et cetera? The higher the affinity score, the more likely they are to respond to a reach out by one of our employees. So a cold call would get you maybe 22% return. Someone introducing you through someone else, not even a recruiter, someone that I'm connected with, would get me an 85% return on that outreach. So never do a cold email again. Use the warm connection. And we got very crisp about where to find that talent and made that part of our hiring technique. So we used the data for that.
Great. So in thinking about the leveraging data, a lot of focus on workforce analytics. Obviously, I work for a business analytics company, and that's something that we're very sensitive to and really promoting throughout our whole entire organization. But not all HR people are analytical. So what are some of the things that you've done maybe in HR to help focus on how to look at data, the need for data, the way to analyze it? What business problems should you be trying to solve leveraging data?
Great question. So one of the reasons why I chose to pursue this profession is that my uncle told me at a very young age that 80% on average of a company's operational expense is talent related. And you can break that into your P&L really quickly in terms of quota, in terms of productivity, cost of hire, the equipment you use, the facilities, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're a service organization, it's in the high 90s. If you're a capitally intense company, obviously it's quite lower from that. And so that data mindset was probably my foundation. So understanding how you pay people, really, really critical to know that how you compete so you don't overpay and you don't underpay, right? You want to be in a competitive sweet spot. So data has been like just the backbone sense in terms of what I look for. I also lean in, I don't want to solve a symptom. So what I look for and try to triangulate against is the business problems. What is the business leader's problem? How are they articulating the problem? And then I ask my business partners and I in the finance organization to drill down to seek to understand what exactly is going on and test out a hypothesis. So if we're having a hard time hiring, the first thing they'll point to is a recruiter. Your recruiters aren't good enough. They're not getting the right talent in. And then you'll find if you dig into the data, it's not compensation, may not be the recruiter. It's actually this hiring manager is very green, not leveling the correct way, not selling the business proposition the right way. And so you can actually use the data to get to the right outcome. But you have to be diligent about that because it's very easy to chase the symptom, make a symptom go away.
Yeah. So last night we talked about the fact that you had implemented an HR hackathon. Yes. I know at SAS, our team in HR has participated in IT hackathons with the IT department, but tell us what this HR hackathon was.
That was probably one of the career highlights for me personally. So we had about 30 interns at LinkedIn the prior year, and they were touching the elephant of HR from various aspects of HR, and I wanted people to fall in love with the profession. And so I was actually getting engineers to do an internship, and finance will do internships in my domain, but they only saw a sliver. And so this past summer, what we said is 40-50% of your role will be doing this hackathon, this community project. And so they had to work with marketing and recruiting and compensation. They had to do an invite, and we ended up, I'll try to make a long story short, we invited 1,200 interns in the Bay Area to LinkedIn for a Friday night, a sleepover to hackathon. And it's a non-tech hackathon. They weren't supposed to do a prototype or anything like that, but we gave them a prompt. And the prompt that these interns came up with is the most searched on and written about topic on the internet today is engagement. And so they showed all these interns that showed up that night. So we had 950 register. We could only absorb 200. And they created teams, and they hacked ideas to increase engagement across the world from their perspective. It was so fascinating. They came up with FOMO, fear of missing out, in terms of performance feedback. And so if you were in a meeting like today and you wanted to give me feedback on the panel, I say, Pat, I really enjoyed seeing you on this panel today, blank. And I have to, to open up the button, I have to give you feedback back if you were in a meeting with me. And so fear of missing out, I'm gonna give you feedback, and you'd give me feedback back. And these are the interns' ideas. I thought they were fabulous. So I'm gonna redo that hackathon again.
Great. I think that's a takeaway we can all go home and try to do as well. So Michelle, your focus has been on merging 3 brands. And change management, I'm sure, has been a big focus for you. Restructuring an HR organization to align to that, and implementing global HR systems. So tell us a little bit about the journey you've been down.
Well, that's probably a longer story than we really have time for. So my company is called FRHI Hotels and Resorts, but if I said that to you, none of you would know what that was. If I say Fairmont Hotels, most of you know. So it's Fairmont, Raffles, and Swiss Hotel, 3 brands that were actually brought together in 2007 under a common umbrella, but the companies were left to run separately, by design, fully intentionally, to keep the brands distinct and unique. The reasoning was, we'll keep the company separate. When I came on the scene, first as a consultant in late 12, it wasn't working, right? And so change management, I think, becomes a lot easier when the organization knows that something's broken and the need for change is very real. And it was further driven by a very significant and meaningful growth agenda, where adding to our 110 luxury hotels around the world was a signed pipeline of deals for another 50 to come online in the next 5 years, which is pretty significant growth. So the call to action was to move from this separate brand organization to a regional geographic model, which is how most multi-brand hotel companies operate in the world today. Fairmont had been a North American, Toronto headquartered company. Swiss Hotel was a Swiss, Zurich-based organization, and Raffles, with the flagship, the Raffles Singapore, was based out of Singapore. And the reality was that people were flying all around the world, zigzagging to take care of the different hotels, and it didn't make any sense. We also had 3 of everything, right? So in human resources, we had 3 performance management processes. We had 3 recruiting platforms. We had 3, which obviously isn't very cost efficient. And so, the burning platform became, we need to reorganize to support growth and better meet the needs of the hotels from a corporate perspective, because they're really, at the end of the day, our clients. So my role was certainly in part about human resources, and we can talk a little bit about that, but I think the more interesting and important part was supporting the needs of the business. So just as Pat was saying, I think we do our most interesting and meaningful work when we're helping the business solve a real business problem, and we're not in our little HR heads. We're thinking like a real business partner, and that's really what this reorganization was about. What does the business need, and what do we know that's unique that other people don't know that we can help the business get there?
So let's talk a little bit about the role that technology has played in any of these initiatives within your organization. So and I'll open it up so anyone that wants to jump in. I know, Kimberly, we talked about a talent management platform. I would imagine, Michelle, that you've been going through systems hell in that journey as well. But what are some of the technology investments that you've made, and what are the gains that you're seeing?
Well, from a talent management perspective, it was kind of, we're going to change the way, I like to say, sustainable talent pipeline, how we hire people, how we develop them, how we retain them. And but we're going to work on those things, and by the way, we're going to implement a global system at the same time, because it can't be about the system. Believe very strongly it has to be about the behavior and what you're trying to drive. And as I reflect back, we're a complex 30 business units all over the globe organization, all not unlike your three groups. We had many different processes and systems. And I remember being relatively new to the role, sitting with my own leadership team, talking about performance management. I'll use that as my example since it's come up a lot this morning. And we were having a consensus meeting, which many of you probably do in your groups. And this thing had been going on for 2 hours. We were debating, do we have to do an action plan here? Do we have to do this? Do we have to do that? And I finally got so frustrated I kind of set my folder down and I said, and we wonder why we drive the business nuts. Here we are HR, and we can't even go through the performance process in a meaningful way. And so I literally got up to the flip chart and I asked my team, why do we bother with performance management? And we ended up, there's two things. We want to drive a good conversation between the boss and the employee, and we want to differentiate pay. Those were the two fundamental reasons. And then we took a step back and said, okay, what is it in our process that's actually driving that outcome? And the reality was there was very little in our process that was driving that outcome. So we went back to the drawing board. But it wasn't necessarily about the system implementation. It was about the problem we were trying to solve in the business and having better conversations. So, that's a historical view. I guess technology-wise, the one I'm most excited about is one we actually haven't launched yet. We're going to launch in May. Again, like many of you, we've always measured engagement, and we do an annual survey, and we ask our leaders to do action plans, we monitor progress, and then we survey again a year later. And in reflecting upon that and the change and pace of change in technology today, it kind of dawned on us that, is that really a good gauge of engagement and how our employees are feeling? I mean, depending on, we may make a benefit change the week before the survey, which obviously is going to impact the results. And are we really measuring the right things and in the most meaningful way? So we're scrapping the old traditional way of engagement surveys, and we're launching a new platform we're calling Employee Insights, not just about engagement, but about how employees feel working for Caterpillar, how they feel about their boss, very short burst surveys that will use statistically relevant samples, phasing in throughout the course of the year. So over time, everyone will be surveyed, everyone will have input, but it'll give us a much more rolling dashboard, if you will, about how people are feeling. We're going to use attributed data so we can hone in where we know we have issues and ask further clarifying questions and continually improve, more iterative.
So you won't be launching a survey at one time. It'll go out at different times to...
Correct. Yeah. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a new way of looking at it. I mean, people think iteratively. It isn't kind of this big bang, I'm going to sit down and answer 100 questions and really tell you how I feel. I think that's an old approach that we need to challenge ourselves to look at differently.
Comment?
I use technology for different reasons. Sometimes as a change catalyst, I let the system lead some of the conversation, depending on what kind of behavior I want, right? Sometimes I let the business philosophy lead it. It depends on the change. So if you're rolling out something for global leverage and compliance, I try to stay away, especially we're high growth. So when I started at LinkedIn, we're about 3,000 employees. In 3 years, we're at 10,000. So that's like really, really high growth. And so I shy away from startups as key partners that haven't been there, done that. So I want to learn with people that have been compliant, that know data privacy, et cetera. So I have a very simplistic view. But if I'm looking at trying to drive a certain behavior, certain tool, I will use the tool's vanilla process to help, filter some of that behavior and tweak from there and learn from the system, actually. Depends on the need.
In thinking about leveraging systems, ultimately it's data integration across all those systems and then surfacing up some insights. What kind of data are you providing to your CEO and to your executive teams to help drive discussions around better business performance?
I'll take a quick stab at that. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have what I call a talent review. So we do it twice a year for Jeff and my peers and the board. And I hijack the first 3 or 4 hours of that day to talk about the org health. And that org health discussion is the traditional stuff that you look at, spans and layers, et cetera, but that's where I've been driving the diversity, inclusion, and now belonging initiatives. I hold up a mirror about the organization. What do we look like? How are we growing? And I try not to own the problem or the outcome. And so it's not just a funnel issue. There's a lot of data out there in terms of the feeder pool and what's available to us and how to court and recruit, but it's a lot harder to create the culture and the environment where they want to stay. So if they're leaving faster or equal in which you're recruiting, you're going to stay stagnated. And so what we're doing now at LinkedIn, and will be part of this talent review analytics, is looking at belonging. And so we've added belonging to our diversity inclusion initiative. We believe, and there's a lot of studies out there today, that if you don't feel like you belong, you're not your best self. And there's a ton of research in the universities about this, not a lot in corporations today. And so we're going to create what I call a DIBS index at LinkedIn. So we're actually surveying, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. If you look at diversity, just the raw numbers, like, are we diverse? Inclusion is, are our benefits and practices fair? Do we look at, fertility benefits for same-sex couples? Do we look at pay practices for equality, et cetera, and performance management? And then the belonging piece is more the emotional side. Do I feel like I belong here with my team? Can I be my most unique self? Which is very emotionally charged, right? So I might believe I belong at LinkedIn, but not with my team, and therefore my voice isn't as loud. Do you treat me with respect? Do you talk over me in meetings? And so we're going to figure out that behavioral aspect of it and the cultural side, and we'll be sharing that data with our executives.
So if I could share a little bit of the journey we've been on. So as part of bringing the three organizations together, I said we had three of everything. So it was reconciling and coming to a common platform. And I think one of the unique challenges for those of us that work in very distributed environments with locations around the world is how do you get access to data, right? And so often, certainly in several of the companies that I've been a part of, HR was went without for a very long time. And so very, very manual. And how do we take away the manual and to be able to do simple things like count, right? Counting is very hard. Counting people, counting how many of them turn over, those kinds of basic issues we need answers to. So that core infrastructure, while not particularly sexy, I think is very, very important to be able to do anything. We've also, gone online with our performance management, our talent management, talent review process, similar to what Pat was describing, that gives us a lot of look at who are our leaders, where are they coming from, what do we know about them, what kind of path do they take to become a general manager of a hotel, for example. But, I think the technology space that's probably been most important for us is in recruiting and selection. So we are 45,000 employees worldwide. We have a very strong employment brand in the hospitality industry. Fairmont in particular is a very, very attractive employer, and we routinely are able to steal people from arguably much larger jobs to come work for us in senior executive roles. But even at the frontline levels, people want to work in our hotels. And so as evidence of that, we had about 8,500 positions open around the world last year, and over 460,000 applicants for those 8,000 jobs. So an applicant to hire ratio of about 38-1, which is a great luxury to have, but that also means you need systems and tools to help you sort through those people, find the right ones, and bring the right ones into your organization. So our applicant tracking system, combined with a proprietary, to us, developed and validated for us selection tool, is a critical technology platform. And I feel like we're just beginning to understand interesting questions like where do our best quality applicants come from? How do we mine them more effectively? And so on and so forth. But just starting to get your hands on the data, both not only to help you do your day-to-day job of how do you fill all these positions, but to really start to understand what the best is out there is very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'd say we have it's very similar. A lot of the data we use pretty much internally to HR. I can't recall a time when I rushed to the CEO's office and said, hey, I found this in the data. Aflac may be a little unusual. We're empowered to make decisions in HR that we see based on the data or based on our own experiences that are occurring. The data for us, is one of these things that it's the language of HR internally. It's very rarely shared outside. I can't also recall a time where I met with the board and they asked me about turnover. If I'm meeting with them about turnover, I'm probably the wrong person with the job. If I see a turnover problem in the data, I should be fixing the turnover problem. So the data is largely used for us internally, but particularly in regards to hiring practices, I think that's probably the most emerging area of the data that we're looking for, particularly as I don't know if there's a war for talent. That seems pretty aggressive, but I think the opportunities to get the talent in the door are becoming fewer and far between for us, primarily driven on location. So we have to be more and more clever about how we reach out to potential applicants. But for us internally, we use a lot of data from an HR perspective. It's rare that the data escapes the HR organization, and that may just be subtly nuanced to Aflac or not.
Well, we talked a great deal about millennials just a few minutes ago, and I don't know about you, but I feel like every other week I'm being asked to be on a panel to talk about millennials. My kids say we're not aliens. I have two millennials, and they remind me of that all the time. And I actually agree with what was stated. I don't think we're all that different. I think some of our organizations, I know SAS was kind of ahead of its time in catering to the types of jobs that maybe the millennials are leaning toward or gravitating to. But you guys got recognized as a great place to work for millennials. So why do you think that is? What is the secret at Aflac?
Yeah, I think the secret at Aflac, it's not something that we're doing new. My entire mission is to take care of employees, and taking care of employees is customization of an employee experience. And I don't know that I happen to be a Gen Xer. I don't know that I'm that much different from a millennial in that I want to feel cared for. Feeling cared for is usually customized, right? Is usually a customized experience. I think we do a good job of that. About 38% of our workforce is millennial right now. We do a really good job of retaining those employees because we're focused on them. We're focused on. I'm okay with custom solutions across the board. I don't have a problem with fixing a career path for this person that doesn't meet the career maps that we just happen to have. I'm okay with having a lot of customization in the system because I think that that's what good people want. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's probably going to be one of the areas in the future where we continue to do well in retaining millennials. I think attracting is not that difficult. Retaining them is a whole nother matter, and I think you have to connect them more broadly, whether it's the Real Talk or Career Success. You've got to connect them to the system of employment as they have been connected in their academics or in their sports teams. You've got to figure out ways to do that.
Right. And that's where technology does matter. They communicate in a different way. They receive information in a different way. So as much as we're similar, there are a few little differences because we have to remember that many of their managers are not millennials, which we've struggled with at SAS and trying to be the leadership that they find credible. Tell me what you've done differently in the way that you interact or communicate within your organization to kind of cater to that population.
Well, I am a generational skeptic, I will say. I think that people are more alike than they are different, and that's true in any number of ways, including what generation they're from. And I think that this notion of belonging that Pat was talking about is really the core. That's the essence of what people want. And our strong focus on engagement and respect and how you treat people, and those are not just words on a piece of paper in our company, they're very, very real. And I think is something that certainly differentiates my current employer from other hospitality companies I've worked for in the past. It's a very real and tangible thing. That said, we did embark on a little experiment that has become a very successful piece of technology within our organization, and we call it FRHI Talk. It is essentially internal Facebook for our company. And this was an experiment that started in Zurich at 3 hotels, and we were building a new portal as part of this organizational redesign that we were doing. And so I said, let's give it a try. Maybe it'll take off, maybe it won't. I've tried dozens of threaded discussions and other kinds of boards like that in the past, and they've never gone anywhere. But this was really different. It took off in a huge way. I don't think it's just a millennial thing. People of all ages, all nationalities around the world love it. And I think it's because it's very in step with how people share and communicate today. Our business is fun. There's lots of great imagery that's out there. They get to post photos from their properties, whether it's a charity event that they're doing locally or a celebration with a client that they had last week. You can comment, you can like. It has really, really taken off, and we have a fantastic partner in that who actually is here from Beekeeper. They're a great organization. If you're interested, he didn't even ask me to plug this. I didn't think I would have the opportunity, but it really has been a fantastic way to sort of bring communication into how people think about doing that in their personal lives.
Yeah, I just say, millennial or not, I think people want a sense of purpose and autonomy to do their job. So when I think of Caterpillar and our brand and what it means to work there, I think how we articulate the mission and making progress possible and improving, making progress, I think is something people connect to that's bigger than themselves, whether you're millennial or not. I think talking about the purpose and mission of your company is important, and giving people the freedom to do their jobs. And I think that's true of all of us. So I think some of the things technology-wise, I guess, that we've done in this space, sometimes it goes back to the basics, and we'll hold what we call Ask Me Anything sessions, where people can come together and really anything's on the table. Sometimes we'll come with a topic, sometimes we won't, but it's just about talking to people, which is great. I think the thought of you can publish a newsletter and everyone's going to get it and receive it and read it, we have to get over that. And think of new innovative ways to do that. So another thing we did was a health challenge. So I was participating in a charity event, our local Dancing with the Stars.
Charity event. Did you do that?
So I had to learn the cha-cha in about 3 months, so you save that for another day. But what I chose to do was I actually posted it on kind of our internal YouTube and said, here's what I'm doing to stay healthy. I'm going to challenge so-and-so in Asia, so-and-so in Europe. Tell me what you're going to do to keep moving. And it went viral. I mean, it amazed me because I didn't really realize I'd get that much response. But before you knew it, we had hundreds of videos online of people being healthy and challenging each other. So I think being creative and keeping it fresh and trying new things is really important that we think about.
I think for LinkedIn about the millennials, personally, for me, I have 3 millennials at home, but I love the millennial generation. Absolutely love it. I think they ask really great questions. I think they're more transparent and open and globally aware than ever before because the information is available to them. Google's been this amazing tool for them. If you don't know, you get a debate, I say Google it. Let's find the information out. So I love that debate and challenge. I think with their debate, we will get closer to fair pay, in terms of gender equality and diversity. I think they will challenge our thinking, and I love that. At LinkedIn, one program we did do that I suggest anyone that wants to embrace the millennial generation consider, we have Take Your Parents to Work Day. And it's pretty freaking amazing. So I took my parents to work in November. It was it was such a blessing to take my 87-year-old dad to work with me at LinkedIn. I'm like, I was so proud. Daddy, this is where I work. And I wasn't alone. So it might have been because the millennials, they don't have kids, right? They're not yet into the family so much, but they are so proud about their parents. And especially in different cultures in India, I mean, their parents have a high say in where they work. And you make LinkedIn cool and respectful and caring about their employees, that loyalty ticker goes up, right? And so embracing the family, all likes of family. So be it your dogs, your parents, your children, embracing the new family unit is a big deal. So take your parents to work. It was kind of cool.
Well, I had not originally had this question, but Kimberly, you kind of sparked interest in thinking about wellness because you talked about that, and that's something that a lot of organizations have top of mind. And we're not talking about just the traditional wellness programs, but things around mindfulness and unplugging and all of that. And we had a little discussion just a few minutes ago with Elliot on talking about or whoever it was, talking about not being able to kind of get away from our devices. Can you share with the group any wellness initiatives that you've had that may be unique?
I'm actually kind of shifting from wellness and thinking about overall health because I think we need to include financial health in that discussion. It's not just about exercise. I think we need to think more broadly about this issue. So, the more financially sound someone is, the healthier they are, the more they're going to focus on the work they do every day. So I wouldn't say we have one unique initiative. We're really trying to address this holistically. There's clearly different challenges in different parts of the globe and in different areas, but I think focusing holistically, understanding what your specific challenges are, and then targeting key initiatives, again, based on the data, is the way we try to approach it.
Yeah, it's very similar to Aflac. It's a much more holistic approach, and particularly we're focused on this financial capability as well, bringing in local financial advisors and people that can help, you plan and develop a financial plan. I'm with you. I don't really have any initiatives, although we are seeing, we are moving towards more on-site healthcare. We're obviously in that business, so that's not unusual. Primarily just for the sake of caring for employees. It's just easier to have access on site, but that's not new necessarily. It's probably fairly common, but we're looking at it holistically, whether it's the Mediterranean diets or having exercise physicians come in. All those things goes way beyond just the standard benefits offering.
I think for us also, it's a much more holistic concept. The term we use is well-being, and by that we mean in every aspect, including that kind of notion of self-actualization and, just working for our company, let you be your best self. And we have a dimension on our engagement survey, and actually that question about lets me fulfill my dreams, working at Fairmont helps me fulfill my dreams, is our best predictor of as a driver of engagement. And the programmatic work, so that's a concept, a part of our culture, but the programmatic work really happens in the individual hotels. And again, we operate in very different parts of the world, right? And we feed 45,000 people every single day. That's been a long tradition within the hotel space. So there's lots of different opportunities, particularly in some very, very needy communities where, you know, our people are literally working not only to feed themselves and their immediate family, but oftentimes their extended family. And so this concept of well-being can have a very broad meaning and is of great value to people, and I agree with the loyalty connection that gets created from that. So it's that sense of family in the biggest sense, I think, for us.
I think we've got a little over 5 minutes. I would love to maybe open it up to you guys to see if you have questions. We have somebody with mics.
There's one in the back.
Thank you. A couple of you mentioned open communication sessions, which you said were very popular. I'm interested in how you actually got people to engage with those and come with questions, because certainly if one looks at from a global point of view, I think there is a difference to the extent to which people engage in those sort of activities as opposed to perhaps submitting anonymous questions in advance. So I'm interested in your feedback.
I can answer that for Aflac. We just made the sessions small. It's been our experience that people are more comfortable in small groups. We tried to start the Real Talk sessions with people from similar areas, so they have commonality, they have relationships built. Starting small for us has been successful. The only issue with the small sessions is you got to have a lot of them. And it becomes a time crunch for the executives that are involved in it. But it's been very successful having small, literally the size of a table like this, very similar to Ask Me Anything. You can literally ask the CEO anything you want to ask, and he'll give you an answer you may not like.
You brought up the question of career counseling. I wanted to hear from the panel what is their viewpoints and any of the successes you had in the career counseling. Because helping the existing employees is a great way of retaining them. Just want to understand whether you're doing proactive or reactive or on case basis and any other solutions.
So for LinkedIn, our founder Reid Hoffman wrote a book called The Alliance, and in The Alliance he introduces this concept called the tour of duty. And in the tour of duty, it accepts the fact that everyone will have an eventual next play. And that next play may be within your company, may be outside the company. But don't make this a hidden dialogue. Make it an open, honest conversation, because people have a natural change curve in how they develop their career and their experiences and their skills. And so with this tour of duty concept, what's becoming more open in the conversation is like, I've been in my current gig maybe 2-3 years. My natural change curve is I like change every 3-4 years. And so if you couple that pattern with how long they've been in current job, you have that data at your hands as HR professionals. You can actually create a heat map and getting in front of people proactively and say, do you still have the butterflies? Are you still learning? What's your excitement coming into the office every day? How can we help you increase that? Or are you cool with what you're at today? That's awesome, keep going. But we're intentional about having career conversations, and we pulse that every 6 months because your job changes, right? It's not a stagnated role.
So I think the way we talk about career is around collecting experiences, and the people move a lot laterally in hotels. If you want to become a general manager, you need to have a lot of different experiences. Hotels are relatively complex businesses with a lot going on in the operation. And so that's been a common way of thinking about how people grow. But in a new leadership program that we rolled out last year, which is called Summit, it's really about, while the onus remains on the individual to own and drive their own career, providing them with a set of tools and opportunities to collect those experiences and understand that growth is about doing different things and learning from each one of them. And as an element of that program, we have something called a career concierge. We are a hotel company, so we have to make those hotel references every once in a while. And a career concierge is not just a counselor. It's someone who can help our Summit participants cut through it, right? Sometimes when you're in a very large company and you're trying to move from the Philippines to Montreal, that's a really hard thing to do. And so the notion of a career concierge is someone who can help make the right calls, get the right connection, say, take a look at this person because there's something really special about them. And so we've just launched this, and so it's early days, but the reception to the idea, because people understand how challenging it can be, has been terrific.
I know I'm not on the panel, but I felt inclined to chime in. We did something similar, but I like your name better. Ours is a career mobility specialist. I like the concierge approach. We may change ours.
My question is for Kim. I'm so excited about your women in leadership initiatives. I wanted to find out how you're measuring the success of that. Are you actually tracking promotions for the women in your organization?
We are. We have a scorecard, essentially, for everything from hiring to promotions by job band level, so very fact-based tracking. Also, we measure inclusion, how it feels to work in the company, in addition to the actual data of movement of talent. So you have the pipeline issue, but you can't underestimate the importance of sponsorship and getting even our male leaders to be able to, what is their elevator speech on why this is important to the company and how does it actually improve business results? And they have wives and daughters and people they can relate to and talk openly about the issue and the challenges that we have as a heavy manufacturing company. So yes, we track the data, but we also spend a lot of time focusing on the environment and how it feels to bring your whole self to work every day, regardless of your gender.
All right, well, that was perfect. The clock went out. So that's all the time we have questions for. Please thank the panel for all of their great insights today.